How Nigeria's $9 million financed a media campaign to play Donald Trump. The New York Times published an article titled, "The Screwdriver Salesman Behind Trump's Airstrikes in Nigeria." That title alone frames the entire agenda. The story suggests that United States military action was influenced by a random Nigerian civilian. The implication is that Donald Trump is so uninformed and reckless that he relied on an entity rather than institutions. This framing serves two political objectives at once. First, it reinforces the New York Times' long-documented editorial posture toward Donald Trump, portraying him as incompetent, impulsive, and easily manipulated. This posture has been consistent since 2016. Second, it aligns perfectly with the Nigerian government's current lobbying campaign in Washington. Let us deal with the military reality first. The United States does not conduct airstrikes based on NGO reports, activist emails, or civilian tips alone. U.S. military action requires multiple layers of verification: signals intelligence, satellite imagery, human intelligence, pattern of life analysis, interagency coordination involving the Department of Defense, intelligence agencies, and AFRICOM diplomatic clearance. Rules of engagement, final authorization at the highest levels. This is not theoretical, it is documented practice. WikiLeaks diplomatic cables from the 2000s showed that U.S. intelligence penetration in Nigeria was already deep. Those disclosures included cooperation, surveillance capabilities, and intelligence sharing. Since that time, U.S. ISR capabilities have expanded significantly through drones, satellites, and signals interception. In some operational contexts, U.S. intelligence has clearer situational awareness than local forces, so they claim that a single civilian provided decisive targeting intelligence to Donald Trump is not merely false, it is incompatible with how modern military operations function. Now let us look at Nigeria's role. In recent months, the Nigerian government has contracted foreign lobbying and public relations firms at a reported cost of approximately $750,000 per month, roughly $9 million annually. The purpose of these contracts is explicit: counter international narratives that Christians are being systematically targeted and killed in Nigeria. That lobbying effort requires a reframing strategy. If international concern can be reduced to the actions of one activist, then the problem is no longer systemic. It becomes simply misinformation, exaggeration, manipulation. This reframing is provided by the New York Times article. It implies that reports of Christian killings are driven by a single instigator. It implies that U.S. action was triggered by bad information. It shifts responsibility away from institutional failures and toward narrative confusion. There is an additional political layer that is rarely discussed. The APC political structure and the Bola Tinubu network are not neutral actors in Washington. Their rise intersects with Democratic Party-aligned political consulting ecosystems. This is documented. During the 2015 Nigerian elections, political consultants associated with Barack Obama's campaign ecosystem, including David Axelrod, Obama's chief political strategists, were involved in advisory and messaging efforts connected to the All Progressives Congress campaign. That campaign was led by Muhammadu Buhari, with Tinubu playing a central frontline role in the effort to remove then-President Goodluck Jonathan. These relationships were reported at the time and discussed openly within political consulting circles. These relationships matter. They establish institutional familiarity, shared media ecosystems, and aligned narratives. So when a New York Times story appears that, simultaneously, protects the Nigerian government from human rights scrutiny and advances an anti-Trump framing, it is reasonable to examine whether old political networks are being reactivated, not as conspiracy, as politics. The outcome is a story that satisfies both agendas. Nigeria gets a narrative that downplays persecution. The New York Times gets a narrative that undermines Trump, but the facts do not cooperate. Bad intelligence does not survive interagency vetting. Imaginary targets do not align with satellite confirmation. And functioning states do not generate verified foreign strike targets. This article is not an expose, it is narrative laundering. The New York Times launders its domestic political agenda through Nigeria. Nigeria launders its Christian genocide problem through an American media institution. The result is a story that sounds dramatic, but collapses under the most basic understanding of geopolitics, intelligence operations, and military decision-making. This is not about truth, it is about intersecting agendas, and Nigeria became the stage for both. This is Systems Under Review. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share.